Hey, so the first style, you've seen it everywhere. It's been the one that's been out there for years. It's the traditional wood fence style. Your traditional wood fence is just a dog-eared picket, 6 feet tall. It could be 6 feet, it could be 8 feet, it could be 7 feet, 4 feet, 3 feet, 2 feet if you really wanted to waste your money. And typically its ultimate goal is 100% privacy. I don't want to see my neighbor. I want my own privacy fence. This is where you would choose that fence. This is a traditional wood fence. This is what's been out there for a really long time, and it's all about privacy. Now, out of all the styles that we're going to show you in this video, this is going to be the cheapest one that there is to build. Now this one is almost identical to the last style, but what it's going to be is it's board on board. My guess is it's going to be about a third more pickets. So it's going to have an additional cost, so it's going to come in a little bit steeper if you wanted to go with something like this. And I am just roughly putting these out there. So we have those, and next what you're going to have is you're going to have that second board, that second picket that comes on top. That's why it is called a board on board. And I'm just roughly spacing these. I'm looking at my dog ears to make sure that they're even. And this doesn't have to be a dog ear. Ultimately, it's wood fence. It's as customizable as you want it to be. If I was doing this for real as an install, I would be using a level and I would have all these spaces marked out. Or I would cheat and I would use a bump board. So the pattern would just continuously continue on. It gives it a unique look, it makes it pop just a little bit more, and it says, I got money and you don't. No, just kidding.
The ultimate difference with this fence is true 100% privacy. Traditional wood fences, where the pickets are placed next to each other, are always going to dry and contract and create gaps. And you'll eventually be able to see through those gaps. It's inevitable. This fence eliminates the chances of that happening. If you don't want your neighbors seeing in, this is the fence for you.
All right, style number 3 is what I'm gonna call a good neighbor fence. A lot of other people call it a shadow box fence. That's when your side of the fence looks just as good as your neighbor's side. That's where this fence belongs. It's very similar to the board on board. And again, this is really rough. If we were in the field, I would actually be measuring a lot more frequently. Just like we did when we did board on board, you're still gonna have a picket, skip one, a picket, skip one, a picket, and skip one. And on that back side, this is where the good neighbor comes into play. So what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna flip this display around. If you were using posts like these, wood replacement posts, you want to still cover that post as much as possible, and then you're going to continue on. So you may have one here, and then you'll start your pattern. Or if you don't care if you see the post and you want to give it a little bit of a decoration, there's always that option to go with a black powder coated trident post. So in this style of fence, that's a couple different options you have if you want to show the post off and you want to give a little bit more character. So now we're going to take that back picket on the back side. We're going to put one there. We're going to put one right. And then we'd continue on right there. Whereas this style of fence, it still offers some privacy, but it's not privacy to the world like a straight traditional or a board on board. You can still, hey, I can see you. You can still see through it. So if you like talking to your neighbor and you want to give them just as nice of a view as you have, this is the style you're looking for. I call it a good neighbor fence. A lot of other people call it a shadow box. It's ultimately your preference. Now let's talk about cost. As far as material and stuff, it's going to cost you a little bit more in pickets. Posts and rails is not going to cost you anything different than a traditional, but it's going to cost you a little bit more in pickets and a little bit more in labor because you're having people go back and forth on each side of the fence. There again, I'm going to put it right up there with a board on board. I'm going to say that those two are going to be pretty close in cost. Maybe this might come in just a little bit under. So style number 4, you can get as crazy with wood fence as you could get lost in your mind. We're going to take the traditional style. We've made some cuts to our pickets, and what we've done is we've cut off the dog ear, so we've cut it flat. I'm going to show you another style that you can do. We're going to run it flat with a top rail. You could do this with whatever height you want. And then we took another one of these pickets, we ripped it in half, and now we're gonna introduce an alternating. So you're gonna have a space. I don't know what the space would be. You'd measure it out and do whatever space you wanted. So then when I say alternating, you're gonna take that original 5.5 wide picket, you're gonna bring it back on this side of that rip, and then you're gonna take the other half of that rip and you're gonna put it on here. And then you're just gonna continue that pattern. And yet again, you're gonna be able to see through this style. So if you and your neighbor get along, or if you don't have any neighbors around you, this is another optional style for you. Wood fence, you can get totally lost in it. You can get crazy, you can design it however you want that fits your feng shui. You know, you can narrow up the gap. It's 100% whatever you want it to be. You could do a smaller gap in between your pickets just to kind of show that off just a little bit. Material wise, it's still gonna take about the same material, maybe just a touch less, but it's gonna take a lot more time. So you're still gonna have a cost somewhere, and it's gonna have a cost on the labor side. As soon as you break away from traditional and all the other different wood fences is when you're gonna start incurring more cost in your fence. So that is something to keep in mind. All right, so style number 5. We're gonna get into some crazy horizontal stuff. Style number 5 is horizontal cedar. So what we're gonna do with this, we're gonna start from, the other thing that you might be noticing is there's no rails anymore. There's no cedar stringers. We're relying on the nailer strips that go in between the post. Again, with horizontal cedar fence, you can go no gap, or you can go gap, and we're gonna go ahead and go with a small 1/2 inch gap. And if you're doing this a lot, what you're gonna do is you're gonna cut yourself a spacer block. I already pre-marked all my spaces out so that way you can make sure all sections are identical to each other. When you're doing something like this, if you have a gap that's off in one section, you're gonna notice it. As I said before, this is just a display, so therefore I'm using brad nails instead of regular nails because that way I can break it apart at the end. It is not recommended to build a wood fence using nothing but brad nails. I would not do that. So now that we got that made, now that we're doing horizontal, you want to cover these dog ears up because we're doing a little bit more modern of a style and a little bit upper class, upper scale, something a lot different. And you want to give it some more character. So that's where you want to hide the post because you can still see the post there. So you need something to hide that post. Now, as some people have said before, they call it a pallet fence. I call it horizontal cedar. It gives off a different vibe. Now, as far as cost, that's a big one because I think there's a hidden cost here that some people may not see, and that is you're not paying for the cedar stringers anymore, so that means your product goes down, so you don't have that cost of the additional product that you don't need, but your post spacing is shorter. On a traditional cedar fence or all those other styles we just mentioned, your post spacing is 8 feet max. With this traditional style, a standard cedar picket, which is what I'm using, is 6 feet tall. So therefore your post spacing is no more than 6 feet on center. So you're shrinking down on your post spacings, you're having to buy more posts, which makes this fence a little bit more expensive or maybe in comparison to the other ones, the other fancier styles that we've mentioned. So I forgot because my demo is so small, but traditionally when you're doing a section out in the field or at your house, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna put a stay in. And that is just a piece of wood. What I'm using is a 2x2, and I'm gonna put it in between these two posts. The reason that this is crucial is, again, you're controlling the warping of the pickets. You don't have any rails, but you still have these pickets, and you wanna try to keep them all perfectly in line this way, and try to keep them all from warping. And you're gonna nail all those pickets into that stay. It keeps all these pickets from bowing in and out from each other and also helps with warping and curling. But we have a bonus to this. And the reason we're calling this a bonus and not a style is because you can do this, what we're about ready to do, to any of the other styles that we've already mentioned. It's like taking the suit and adding the tie. That's all we're doing. So we're gonna pull these face pickets off that we already put on. But why? Then you're gonna see that ugliness. Well, because we're gonna add some more character. For the bonus, we're gonna do a trim and cap. And like we said, you can do this to any of your other fence styles. So because we took the cover plate off, we got 2 new ones that are that much shorter. So 3.5 inches shorter. And they're gonna sit in just like so. Because without this, you can still see your post back here and you can see all your framework. If you're gonna spend all the time trimming it out with the face trim, you definitely wanna trim out the post too. Now for the finale, this is a 2x6, and you could do it with a 2x6, you could do it with a 1x4, you could do it with a 1x6. 2x6 is what I have, so that's what we're gonna do it with. And that is just a top cap. It gives more definition to your fence. If you're gonna have it stick out one direction, traditionally, we take a cover picket and we cover the backside of the post. So we have a little bit of overhang here. I want just a little bit of overhang here to mimic that. It's not a huge overhang here, but it still gives it a lot of definition, a lot of character, and it has a little bit of character on the backside as well. And we are gonna go ahead and take some 3-inch stainless steel screws. We're gonna screw that into the top. This is not doing anything. It's not structural, it's not adding anything to the fence. It is just there for decoration, to be dead honest. So you don't need 1,000 screws in this. If you put one in every 2x2, you're gonna be just fine. That's our cover picket. It's one of my favorites because it shows it off. It's something different. It's something unique. It is very expensive as soon as you start adding the trim work because you're paying for more product, you're paying for more time, more labor. All in all, to trim a fence out, it's not cheap. You get a beautiful product in return. I do like the trimming cap. I think it makes a really nice pop. I don't think there's a bad side to the fence on either side. There's not an ugly side. And it's different. I mean, you have something really nice this way, but even this way, I don't think it looks bad at all either. I think it still has a lot of character. Even the stay gives it character. SWI is your fencing headquarters for all of your fencing needs, shipped straight to your door. Make sure and check out our website. It's Dan with SWI. We are Wyoming's Fence and Gate Company. We hope you have a good dang day.